Good evening, good evening. It is February 20th, 2022. That is 2002 2022. It is a Sunday night, which means it is time for Sunday Night Magic. Thank you everyone for joining the Variable Play Network. My name is Javi. Welcome to Sunday Night Magic, where we talk about all things magic with some biases towards Commander. But sure, we talk about a lot of Magic. So thank you everyone who are joining. You can catch the recording of this, of course, on the Variable Play Network, where you still can comment, share, and also let us know your thoughts, even though you are not here for the live stream. But so for today, we do have an interesting topic. Before I want to get into it, for those of you who joined last episode, you may have noticed somebody else was on the board, and thank you so much, Ron, for covering while I was gone. I was taking care of something that really could not. It needed priority, and I could not make the show. So thank you, Ron, and also for sharing the information on the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty commander deck that you purchased. It is, it was nice to see the red green deck and the deck list and go over it. I personally have my preference for the blue white vehicle deck. So that one I'm really looking forward to trying out. The synergy just makes a lot more sense to me. And for anyone else that is looking to get into Commander, I think that the blue white vehicle deck that is coming out for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty would be a great choice for you to start with, or any of the previous available commander decks that would be in your local game store. Definitely give it a shot if you have the opportunity. So, with that in mind, the episode that previously covered was my top 10 commanders that would be coming from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And I did say that I will be revisiting this topic. So, for today, I am going to be talking about my top 10 cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty for Commander and EDH. Specifically, the cards that we're going to be looking at today are pretty much non commanders. These are cards that would belong in the 99 of your deck. So, if you are looking to revise, build, or even tweak and make adjustments to your existing commander decks, these are definitely some options for you to look into. Again, I kind of look a little bit more towards competitive Magic, so that might be something that is not for everyone. But this here is my top 10 list. These are the cards that when I saw them come out on this set, I thought that these are must haves, that they are some of the best cards from the set. And so I rounded it down to 10 with one runner up. Hey, we got a comment. Ron was just talking about you, buddy. Thank you so much for covering last week. I really enjoyed the content that you put out, and I want to play that blue and white vehicle deck. Thank you so much, Ron. So, pretty much let's go and jump into my top 10 picks from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty for your 99. Okay, this is non-legendary cards that you could definitely consider adding into your deck to really maybe bring it to that next level, or give you some ideas of decks that you may want to build. So let's go first with my very first, I would say, honorable mention. Hey, hi Anna, thank you for posting the otter. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. So, my honorable mention, or my number 11 for today, is the Cloudstone Kirin. So, Kirin are spirit creatures that they introduced in the Kamigawa set. So this time around, they have introduced these spirit creatures, but now it is an artifact creature, and weirdly enough, it is also an equipment. So it has a new ability which is called Reconfigure. So you can turn a creature into an equipment. Essentially, what you're looking at here is a suit of armor meant for like a horse or a Kirin, which is a spirit. So let's go over the details really quick. You are looking at a 3 to cast that is 2 colorless and 1 white, and it is a 3/2 flyer. That is basically the entire creature itself. So it's not really that great. I mean, 3 to cast 3/2 flyer is okay. It only has 1 white, which means it is kind of easy to cast. It is an artifact, so white does have a really does have a lot of tools for looking for artifacts and even equipment. So it's basically a living equipment, and for 5 colorless you can basically attach this over to a creature that you control, and that creature gains a new ability. It gains flying, and you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. So that's actually a really good ability. There are builds that exist that can have infinite turns that use red spells, and you just have to manage to keep yourself alive. And these are one of the ways to do it. This is a living version of another effect known as the Platinum Angel, which has the exact same wording. So you can put this on a creature and give it flying. But the reason why this is an honorable mention for me is that it comes in at white, which is really a very struggling color. You do require to have this in play, have a creature you can attach it to, and then pay 5. And on top of all of that, there is no protection for this creature, which means that it can be taken out relatively easily. And pretty much the whole effect that you're banking on to stay alive and your opponents can't win can be nullified really quick. It's still something that got me very excited when I first saw it because it has a lot of potential, but I would caution anyone using this card that you need to have a lot of things in place to make sure that when you use it, it's not gonna blow back on you and cost you a game, because this might encourage you to take some risk that you shouldn't. So my honorable mention for today's episode is the Cloudstone Kirin. All right, we got some comments. Yes, Ron, the other Ron, Raun, thank you very much for joining. Hi, bud. So tonight is the 99 card. So I encourage you to jump back 2 episodes if you are interested to see the list of top 10 commander recommendations that I had. But for today, we're talking 99, and we are moving to my number 10. So my number 10 is actually a very, very simple card that I thought had a lot of potential for the set. And let me just pull up the image here really quick. Okay, let's see. One moment. Number 10 goes to. Okay, yeah, so we did Cloudstone Kirin. Okay, let me just look for it here. I don't think the image attached. Hmm, right. One moment. Here we go. Technical difficulties. So my number 10 is actually one of the most interesting and I would say cutest cards that I have seen that would make it into any of my commander decks. I give number 10 to Rabbit Battery. So this takes the same concept of the living equipment by having a 1 to cast 1/1 haste. So it is just a harmless little rabbit, but for a single red mana, you can attach this or equip it to a creature. It gives it +1/+1 in haste. There are so many great creatures that just need haste in order for it to just wreck opponents. And for a single red mana, you can get that done. You make it just a little bigger and faster. So I wouldn't sleep on this card. This is something that you can stick on a Godo Bandit Lord and like swing out immediately. You can just once you get your commander down for just a single red more, it can now swing and start wrecking face immediately. Or if you're just waiting, it still is a one to cast 1/1 with haste, which is there's no downside to that. It's like a reckless goblin basically, and it's a little bunny. So I don't know how many rabbits exist in Magic lore, and of course there is not any mechanical rabbit that I can think of that is standard legal or even commander legal. So this is a very interesting card that I wouldn't sleep on. This is akin to Lightning Greaves, just without the haste, and even Swiftfoot Boots. That there are a lot of effects that give haste. It is red specific, which might be something that is to its detriment. But at the same time, I think that haste is really something that red does well. And this card is a great example of that. So my number 10 goes to Rabbit Battery. Number 9 is a card that I think does a great job on improving and finally bringing something that black has urgently been needed. I play black, and unfortunately, it is borderline suicidal. The amount of life that you pay to get effects from black hurts so much. And now for my number 9, I present to you Reckoner's Bargain. It is two to cast, it is an instant, and in addition to casting the spell, you may sacrifice or you have to sacrifice an artifact or a creature. Okay? And for doing that, you gain life equal to the sacrifice permanent's value and draw 2 cards. To put that into context, there is an older version of this card, which is called Costly Plunder. It does the exact same thing, and you sacrifice an artifact or a creature, and you draw 2 cards. Reckoner's Bargain gives you life. It's the exact same cost. It is also instant speed, but you can gain life back. That is so important in black. I cannot stress enough how that could possibly even save you from sudden death in any game. That out of nowhere you can just gain life. Black has so little life gain, or it requires you to put down something massive, like really big creatures that have lifelink. It needs like some kind of demi lord demons in order for that to happen. And mind you, that the cheapest version of this card is something called Village Rites. For 1 black, you will sacrifice a creature and draw 2 cards. This offers flexibility by letting you also choose an artifact for a single colorless, and then you gain life. So, Village Rites is sacrifice a creature, draw 2. It's a single black, which is fine. Now, you add in a colorless, and now you have the option of artifact. And the latest version of it throws in life gain for black. So this is a card that I wouldn't sleep on. And mind you, it is a common card. You have access to creatures at all times with your commander. And in the game of Commander, you have a lot of disposable creatures. And if you're playing black, you're probably doing that anyway. This is a great fit for aristocrat builds, token builds, any death triggers. That the fact that you even just get life out of this makes it far more superior to any of the other cards in the same vein as this. So, number 9, I give to Reckoner's Bargain. I will get this in foil and pretty much put it in any black deck that I'm running that has maybe I would say a above 20 creature count, or even maybe an above 10 creature count, because you still have access to creatures through your commanders. So something to think about and add in. Let's move to number 8. Number 8 is also another surprise card. This was originally spoiled when the first Neon Dynasty cards were coming out, and a lot of people were really thinking of how to build around it. This is the Thousand Face Shadow. This is actually a reimagining of the Sakashima cards from the original Kamigawa set, you're looking at a one to cast 1/1 ninja. And it is flying, which is pretty good, which means that it does have evasion. It can get through to your opponents, but it actually doesn't necessarily matter. You don't really want this stuff because you actually want to sneak it into a fight using its ability of ninjutsu. You will pay two colorless and two blue, so that's a total of four. Basically, you're paying for a 4 for a 1/1 ninja, which is kind of crap. But when Thousand Face Shadows enters the battlefield from your hand, which means it had to come from ninjutsu, if it's attacking, which is, it probably is going to be, then you can create a token of another attacking creature that you have. And then that token comes in also attacking. You basically get to replicate any of your attacking creatures. And that token or that copy doesn't die at end of turn, which is also really, really good. So it is a Fortocast clone effect. And the fact that ninjutsu works when you do not block a creature. So the option to block is already done. He will sneak in the game and you will get a copy of another attacking creature. And since blocking is already done, essentially that token copy is already unblockable, which is amazing. So you're getting a copy of any attacker, and then it's pretty much going through face unless somebody has an answer. And there are so many creatures that you probably want to copy that have great enter the battlefield effects, or could even take out multiple opponents. Because when this comes in tapped and attacking, you can still assign who it's attacking. It doesn't have to be the original player that you hit for face. You can technically sneak this in and hit somebody else. So the reason why it's a little lower on my list is because it does have several requirements. This has to be in your hand. You need an attacker that wasn't blocked, and you need another attacker that it can clone, and then you have to pay for the four ninjutsu costs. So couple of hoops and hurdles to get through, but when you do, it pretty much makes a permanent token copy of any other attacker you have, which is a really great thing to have. Hey, hi, KO. Yes, I am here to change your mind on Kamigawa and show you just how busted some of these cards are. So these are, I think, some of the most competitive cards that I would be running, and I hope it gives you some ideas. But to really be upfront about this, you're going to be seeing a lot of blue. And for those of you that know my playstyle, it really does matter. Blue has proven to be really good in this new set. There are some really impressive cards. And to give you an idea of just how much better it's gotten for blue in this new set, number 7 is Reality Heist. This costs 5 colorless and 2 blue. It is 7 to cast. It is an instant, which is so expensive. But you can technically cast it out of turn. And this spell costs 1 less for each artifact you control. For those of you that are familiar with the concept, that is affinity. Magic the Gathering did have affinity introduced in the Mirrodin set. I don't know why they just didn't put affinity on this. Maybe because it's not in theme with the location or the set where this was printed, but that is affinity. So you could actually get this spell down to 2 blue. And what does the spell do? It lets you look at the top 7 cards of your library, and you may reveal up to 2 artifacts from them and put it directly into your hand. This lets you dig, and the rest of those cards go underneath your library. Getting to look at your top 7 and then even keeping 2 artifacts from it can be really, really helpful, especially if you are running an artifact driven deck. This is a great dig spell. You do it at end of turn at a discounted price, and you start your turn with 2 artifacts or up to 2 artifacts that you desperately need. To give you an idea of what this card, where this card came from, the very first version of this is called Dig Through Time, which cost 8. 2 blue and 6, and it had an ability of Delve that you can give up cards in your graveyard to make the spell cheaper. It says look at the top 7 of your library and put 2 of them in your hand. So it's better because it's not artifact specific, but you are giving up cards from your graveyard in order to make this cheaper, not simply by owning artifacts. Or you can even try using the later versions of this same effect. There is Drawn from Dreams, which costs 4. Look at the top 7, and it does the same thing, but it's sorcery speed, which means it's much slower. Or Memory Deluge, which also costs 4. You get to look at your top 4 and keep 2, and then it has flashback for 7. So it doesn't even really have the cost reduction. So if you go back to the original version, or the latest version of this, rather, it is 7 to cast. You can get it down to 2. And sure, it is artifact specific, but it also has cost reduction attached to it that doesn't really come at any cost to you, except you just have to own the artifacts. You can use something that produces mana. A Soul Ring will give you 2 colorless, and since it is an artifact, you have basically reduced this spell by 3. So you can get this and you can probably cast it really, really quick if you are using an artifact based blue deck. So that is, I think, a really, really good card. It may not be something you're going to cast on your first or second turn, but late game, this is also really helpful. The only, I guess, caveat or limiting factor to it is that you have to be an artifact based deck. And when you're playing blue, there is a high percentage that you are doing that either way. So my number 7 goes to Reality Heist. Great card. Cannot wait to try this out in any of my mono blue artifact based builds, or even my experiment that is coming up for blue and white with Tameshi. Hey, you got a comment? Got a comment? Here we go. Ha! Yes, ninjas. You know what? That is everyone's selling point, really. But there is vehicles. There is now Aura Tribal, Shrine Tribal. There's so much introduced in this new set to give you some ideas. There are mechs now, mind you. Not even just ninjas. There are mechs. Magic the Gathering now has mechs in its world, which I never thought we'd get to that point, but we're here now. So this set is, I guess, pushing the boundaries of where they can go design and theme wise. So I can't wait to see what else they have next. I mean, they have new Capenna and some other announced planes, and they're also really getting weird, but we're gonna get there. Okay. Not unless there's a Ninja Turtle commander. You know what? There is no Ninja Turtle. There is a Turtle commander. It isn't a ninja. And then they did introduce a Turtle Ninja, but it is not legendary, so it cannot be your commander. So there are 2 cards that can meet those requirements, but you know what? It's coming. It's coming. Yeah, Kappa Tech record. Yeah, that's the one. So that, well, it's not legendary, but you know what? That's a Ninja Turtle does exist. And then a Commander Turtle does exist. So you're getting there. And I don't know. If you do build a Ninja Turtle deck, I would like to see how it functions. I would gladly play against it anytime. So let's move on to my next one. So number 6. This one is a little strange because I originally had this set a little higher, but in retrospect, it does have its limits. So it is a land. It's actually a really great land. This is uh, Aotawara Soaring City. It's a legendary land. It produces blue, doesn't come into play tapped. So it's already efficient as it is. It is non-basic because it is a legendary land, but it actually has channel. Channel is one of the weirder abilities that Kamigawa originally had, and it was kind of crap, to be honest. So this is an improved version of it, and you can pay 3 colorless and a blue, discard Aotawara, and return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. That is four possible targets that are, or card types that you can target, and it returns it to its owner's hand. So you can use this defensively and offensively, but of course, a bounce means that they can recast those things. Now, that cost is also reduced for each legendary creature you control. I would have actually ranked this higher if they just said every legendary permanent because it would count legendary lands. But it's only counting legendary creatures, which doesn't really make any sense to me. Why would only legendary creatures be the reason for cost reduction? There are legendary lands, legendary artifacts. There's so many things that could have been added in here to help reduce the cost. So, in terms of design space, I think that they worded this wrong. They could have made it so much better. But okay, if they just said legendary permanent, this card would be an automatic CEDH pick. It would maybe skyrocket in price because what you're looking at is a land card. It is not a spell. It is not counterable by counter spells. You need to counter the activated ability here, which there's only really a limited number of cards that can do that. So even at the cost of four, it is still a pretty good bounce. You're just discarding this card and pretty much getting that effect, but you can even make it cheaper and get it reduced all the way down to one in maybe the mid to late game, which you may not necessarily get to do that, but your commander is a guaranteed legendary creature. So at the very least, you have a three to cast bounce spell that, oh, sorry, not even a spell, just a three to cast bounce that is nearly impossible to counter. So there's so much potential again there that I know this isn't really a blue card, but of course, since it produces blue, every blue deck should be running this. Unless you're going total creatureless, I'm pretty sure you have maybe one to like four legendary blue creatures. Or if it's in a mix of not just mono blue, you do have more than one legendary creature. You're running partners, that's two. You can get this reduced down to two. Why not? And it is a bounce effect that can just get and sneak into the game unexpectedly. So don't sleep on this card. It is great and should be included in just every deck that runs blue that has legendary creatures. So that was my number six, Otawara Soaring City. Number five is a character in Magic the Gathering lore that is very near and dear to me because this guy was, I think, one of the best written villains in some of the more modern Magic storylines. And this card just goes to show how evil this guy is. We are looking at Tessera, Betrayer of Flesh, that he has finally opted to just really turn himself full machine and forget living creatures, so to speak. Yeah, he is the betrayer of flesh. You're looking at a four to cast four loyalty planeswalker that has a static ability. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn. Okay, so even on your opponent's turns, you get to do this at least once, this effect, and it reduces activation costs by two for your first artifact activation ability. There's a way to abuse that I haven't quite figured out yet, but I can actually walk you through an infinite combo right now. Um, Tezzeret's abilities are plus one, draw two cards, then discard two cards unless you discard an artifact. That is a thirst for knowledge effect, so it's an existing already magic spell just turned into a loyalty ability. And minus two, target artifact becomes an artifact creature. So he animates artifacts. And if it isn't a vehicle, it has the base power and toughness of 4/4. So it can even turn your 0 to cast artifacts into a 4/4. You can turn your Dark Steel Citadel essentially into a indestructible 4/4 blocker. So he has a way to defend himself, which is pretty interesting. But if you can actually get him to 6 loyalty, you can remove all 6 and you get an emblem that reads Whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card. Take that into consideration. Whenever you tap an artifact, you get to draw. Treasures require you to tap and sacrifice them, so you start drawing for that. Or look at the basalt monolith. You can tap it for 3 colorless, untap it for 3, tap it for 3, untap it for 3. You will draw your entire library. All you need to do is sneak in effects that pretty much say if you cannot draw a card, you win the game. And then you're holding all of your cards. So every counter spell and trick in the book is in your hand. So you don't even have to really run this as mono blue. But Tessera, Betrayer of Flesh, can actually build you a crazy draw engine. It doesn't even have to be infinite, like I said. Just simply tapping a treasure and sacrificing it, or even a mana rock, will get you a card. So you just have to defend it for a little bit, or even put it in circumstances that your opponents cannot attack you, and you can turn your Planeswalker into the greatest blue draw engine ever. It's a little slow, but hey, I would run it. And I encourage everyone else that is a blue artifact builder to just really grab yourself a copy of Tessera Betrayer Flesh when you can. Activated abilities of artifacts even include equip. Okay, so it can even be used in other deck types that if you are just looking for like cost reducers for your artifact activation abilities. It only happens once each turn, but that is still something that can be used to your benefit. So that is my, okay, I believe we're at number 5. Yes, so we did 9, 8, 7. Okay, yes, 6. So this is number 5. Let's go to number 4. Number 4 is another card that I thought would be I when I first saw it, it looked like a magic card that could fit in just about every other blue deck again. So yes, I'm sorry you're probably tired of seeing blue cards, but hear me out on this. This is Discover the Impossible. Discover the Impossible is a 3 to cast instant that reads as follows. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. So already there, it is digging for you. It is doing some work that blue does so well. And I'll get to that in a moment. Then you get to exile one of them, okay, and put the rest on on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you take one of your cards and put it out of the game. You may cast that exiled card if it just so happens to be an instant that costs 2 or less. So you're missing a counter spell. This might help you go find a counter spell. You get 5 cards deep and you can go look for answers, provided it costs 2 or less, which it's not really a problem for blue, to be honest. There's some amazing cards there. But okay, you're not going to be able to cast like a Force of Will or something out of this because they cost so much. They're 5. But hey, Mana Drain might be in there and it's amazing. Or let's say you don't really find anything you want. Let's say that you look at the top 5, you're not desperate for any of these cards, but there's something that you like. Oh, there's an artifact I can use next turn. If you don't cast it, you just put it in your hand. Looking at your top 5 and digging out a card that you need the next turn, still pretty good. Take this into consideration. The original version of this card is Impulse. It is 2 to cast. You look at the top 5 cards of your library, you take one and put it into your hand. Not draw, you put it into your hand, so it even gets around draw effects. Then they made a 3 to cast version which is called Supreme Will. It pretty much can act as a counter spell, or look at the top 4, put one in your hand. So it's an impulse that has the option to become a counter spell. This is the latest version that it still costs 3. It is the impulse effect, but you can cast something that is 2 or less, and you're also not just limited to it being a counter spell. So let's say that from that top 5 cards, you did find an instant like a brainstorm or even an impulse that you want to go 5 cards deeper. And you're not really interacting with your opponents. Discover the Impossible is still pretty good. And blue has amazing cost reductions for instants and sorceries. This is something again that I would encourage everyone to add into their blue decks, that just going 5 cards deep to look for the answers that you need, or even just to see what else you can pull out for the following turn, is a great thing that I would encourage everyone to kind of build their decks around. So there, that is Discover the Impossible. Hey, we have a comment. Hey, hi Gabby Domingo. Yep, yes, we do have live streams. So Sunday Night Magic is live every Sunday night. There is a lot of content and shows on the Variable Play Network. At the end of this episode, I will run through the reel of all of our shows if you're interested to see what else is available. But you know what? If it's strictly Magic for you, man, you can join us every Sunday at this time at 9 p.m. for Sunday Night Magic. All right, so just getting back to this. So I believe, okay, that was number 7, 6, 5. So this is number 4. Yeah, Discover the Impossible. Number 3 is a card that when I first saw it, also, this one is another auto include for me, only because it looks daunting when you see the casting cost, but I happen to really be around a lot of red players, and I am so sure that I'm going to see this in just about every game that I play. This is Invoke Calamity. It is 1 colorless and 4 red. That is right, 4 red. This is going to be so hard to cast, but when you do, this is an instant, and you may cast up to 2 instants and or sorceries with total mana value of 6 or less from your graveyard or hand. So you can even cast another card from your hand without paying their mana costs. They just have to fit in the value of 6 in total. If those spells would be put into your graveyard, they're exiled instead, and even Invoke Calamity gets exiled. Okay, so this actually works in different functions. It gets around some effects that might prevent you from casting spells, or you get to reuse spells from your graveyard. Now, you might consider the casting cost of this absolutely daunting, but take into consideration that cards like Jessica's Will exist. Okay? So, remember that Jessica's Will could probably produce about 7 red mana, and when you cast it, it goes to your graveyard. You can use Invoke Calamity to cast it again, or at a later turn, because this happens at instant speed and allows you to play sorceries immediately. It gets past spell restrictions because it says you may cast up to 2 instants and or sorceries without paying their cost. So it already allows you to cast sorceries at instant speed, which already breaks a rule right there. So imagine this example that I have on screen. Jessica's Will and Wheel of Fortune are both sorceries and both fit into 6 mana value. Imagine doing this before the end of your turn, or on your turn, cast Jessica's Will. Produce 7 red mana, maybe. Spend 5 of it to use Invoke Calamity to recast both of this. You could potentially net yourself at least 9 red mana, exile 3 cards from the, 6 cards from the top of your library, and then draw 7 more cards. That is 13 cards and 9 red mana. You could most likely win the game at that point, depending how you have it built. So, Invoke Calamity is a really great way of just free casting that if the blue card we looked at earlier, which was the Discover the Impossible, might be able to dig 5 cards deep and get you a free counter spell. This one here can even cast extra turn spells that you've already used and put into your graveyard. It could let you cast a spell and even a fork effect, which usually costs two, and get those to replicate themselves. There's a lot that you can pull off with this, even though those cards essentially get exiled afterwards. It's still reusing existing spells, free casting, and is within. I think I know four red looks really hard to do, but you know what? If you're even playing mono red, like from the example I just provided a while ago, that doesn't even matter to you. You could probably run like Seething Song with this and produce just a crap load of red mana too if you wanted. So it's something to take into consideration. I think that this is a really impressive card. The design of it puts it at a cost which I think is very reasonable for what it does. So this here is my number three, Invoke Calamity. Number two was originally, this was my original number one. I am so highly impressed by the design of this card. I plan to put this in every build that I have that has any effect related to discarding, which is kind of actually a high majority of the decks that I run do have discard effects, with maybe the exception of green white. And this is the Containment Construct. This was originally supposed to be my number one card for this set. It is a 2 to cast construct. It's an artifact creature that is 2/1. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard, and if you do, you may play that card this turn. This gives every spell and card, like a land, pretty much everything that you would exile or anything that you discard gains madness, which is you get to cast it from exile. You can pair this together with so many other cards or even just reuse spells that trigger discard. Imagine something like, oh, Mox Diamond. When Mox Diamond comes into play, discard a land card. When you discard it, this will trigger. Exile it, and if you do, you may play that card this turn. Play the land. So you got your Mox Diamond and you got your land together. That is speed. Or you're playing something that, oh, Wheel of Fortune, let's discard seven cards and everyone draws a new seven. Because of this guy, you can actually exile all seven, and you're technically holding on to 14 cards for that turn, while your opponents just get seven, and whatever they discarded is already sitting in their graves. This is something that has so much potential, especially in the CEDH meta that has so many wheel effects, or even just builds that require you to discard so many cards. Imagine there are a lot in blue that let you discard a card to do an effect, and you're giving up that card, but not anymore because of this. Even black has so much discard. Red's looting effects. Oh, Fateless Looting. Draw two cards, then discard two cards. That normally would just mean that you get two and now you're down by two. With this effect, the Containment Construct still gives you access to those two cards that you discarded. And then it's actually an option because it says you may. So if you're not even willing to list exile those cards, you don't have to. So this has so much potential and gives you so much flexibility once you're looking into effects that make you discard. The only reason why it didn't really make it to my number one is because it doesn't really have much of defense for itself. It's a 2/1. You're not going to really be attacking or blocking with this, and it can die really easily. And if it's timed right, that you're hoping to discard and gain benefits of what you're doing, the effect will enter the stack that you may play that card this turn, but it could cost you a lot because once this creature's gone and you lose that effect, those cards might just remain in exile. So there is a high risk, high reward to it, but I am really I would be an advocate for this card to be added to any deck that has discard effects, which is pretty much talking about blue, red, and black. Blue, red, and black have so much discard. Now, in green, there are some like, oh, discard a creature card to go look for a creature card. With the help of this, sorry, flip camera, with the help of the containment construct, you can actually still cast the card that you discarded that way. White probably is not going to be using this at all unless it's combined with a different color. White may not necessarily have discard outlets or discard effects, but there are a lot of artifacts that do that as well. Anvil of Bogarden would work perfectly with this, that you get access to one new card every turn. Discarding to hand size would only work if you have instant speed cards, which might help too. Maybe a Shimmer Zur build, but the potential and game breaking effect of this, essentially letting you use any card that you discard. Um, if you use those cards as payment for something and then you still have access to it, is really, really good. If your opponents try to hurt you by making you discard, you actually still have access to the card, provided that you are able to cast it when needed. So, Containment Construct is probably one of the most surprising cards that have come out of this set, that I want a foil set of this. That is on the top of my shopping list and probably number one. But number one is kind of very, very highly sought after right now. So it could work against me if I decide to go and try looking for this card. But you know what? I don't know. It's in high demand. A lot of people want it. So let's just jump into number one. Number one, if you haven't seen it already and a lot of people are talking about it, it's actually a land. Number one goes to Boseiju, Who Endures. This is the second reimagining of the Boseiju. Originally, it made spells uncounterable and was just a colorless land. Now it is a green card. It is a legendary land similar to the one that we featured earlier, and then it adds green. So it doesn't come into play tap. It has no downside, but you can channel this for one colorless and one green. You will discard this and destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non basic land. So it can hit lands, but it has to be non basic and it has to be something an opponent controls. So there's a little bit of limitation here. Okay, now that player may search the library for a land with a basic land type and then put it into the battlefield. So basically, it looks for basic lands. Okay, and then this ability costs one less to activate for each legendary creature. You're really only going to reduce it by one. So you are either paying two or just single green. But you can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or non basic land. And it is an activated ability. It is not a spell. It is almost uncounterable. This is an amazing removal spell that you don't even need to give up a card slot in your green deck because you're just basically using a land. If you don't need it, don't play the land and keep it in your hand for just when it matters the most. This is probably just a, I would say, a lesser version of Assassin's Trophy. It's a black and a green, destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search your library for a basic land card and put it into the battlefield. So it actually does the same, just about the same thing. Assassin's Trophy targets permanents. So it can target planeswalkers and like creatures. There's so much flexibility to this, but it is black and green. What if you're not building with black in mind? So you cannot use this spell. If you are running green, this is an auto include because it produces green at no drawback and then can be used to destroy an artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land. So it doesn't destroy any permanent, but just having the option of breaking three possible permanent types makes it actually a really useful tool. And again, it may not be counterable at all, So this is an auto include for any casual to competitive. If you are running green, you are pretty much holding on to what would be called a naturalize effect, which is destroy an artifact or enchantment. Now, it even has the additional benefit of destroying a non basic land. And in the realm of competitive EDH, I mean, from personal experience, I can tell you that if you are destroying non basic lands, your opponent probably has like one or two basic lands in their library. And if especially if they are playing metas that use like tainted pact or demonic consultation, where you well yeah tainted pact you cannot have repeat card names, so the basic lands are down to like one snow covered of each and one normal of each, so maybe six basic lands and or even less. Like I've ran a version of that deck that has two basic lands. If they're already in play and you use this to break a non-basic land, I'm not getting anything to replace it with. So it's almost like I would say I don't know. It's just a benefit that your opponent might be able to capitalize on, but most of the time it's just like a formality. It doesn't really change anything. It denies them a very important non-basic land and may not even really be able to replace it. This card is highly sought after upon its release and should really be a part of any deck that is running green. Hell, you know what? Even in standard, if you're not running green, you can just have four copies of this really and just get one in the game and use the other three to have the effect. I mean, even reducing the cost using legendary creatures. That's why the other land, Aotawara, ended up higher on the list because you got to get that down from four to like one blue. And, you know, that just goes to show that blue is considered to be just a little too powerful this time around. This here is green and it only costs two. Like, that one was a bounce. This is a destroy. Sure, they might get a basic land, but it just goes to show that in terms of the power level balancing, blue kind of got the upper hand here. But number one goes to a green land, like because its flexibility and utility for any deck makes it an auto include that I hope you guys consider. I will be getting a copy as soon as I can find one. And the fact that it's legendary means that this probably has even alternative art that you might want to look at too. So that was my top 10 cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty for your Commander EDH builds. These are the cards for the 99. I hope that this gave you some ideas, maybe help you build your little shopping list for the Neon Dynasty set. I did not, I already covered my top 10 commanders in a previous episode. Please go check out episode 31. The playlist on the Variable Play Network should be reflecting all of the episodes by the end of this evening. And then also, along with that, I will be putting out additional content maybe next week where we can talk about specifically some of the unique cards that came out in the Commander pre-constructed deck because they were not taken into consideration on this list. Thank you to everyone that kind of jumped in the comments today. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, other Ron. Thank you, Ron Toriel. Thank you, Keo. Also to one of the new people that checked out the show today, Gabby. Thank you very much. I hope to catch you guys all in the next episode. But you know what? Until then, keep gaming, everyone.